Who do you trust for information? Where do you go for authoritative information? Well, here's a statement that is made by the atheist, that blind adherence to religious dogma is dangerous. And I think so. Blind adherence to anything, I think, is dangerous. But that idea also can be applied to other circumstances. Nowadays, I believe this is true, that scientists in Western civilization are the culture's high priests of knowledge. So think about it for a while. Notice how often somebody in a white lab coat is interviewed. After some of these school shootings, I remember seeing on TV, on the news, people are trying to explain how could this awful thing happen, and who do they go to? They go to the scientist, who says, well, he probably had something going on in his brain, or offering some kind of explanation, because a scientist, that's where you go for authoritative information. You don't go to the pastor anymore. Used to be, a couple hundred years ago, that's where you went, but not nowadays. So just be on the lookout for when things happen, usually bad things, but sometimes good things. How do we explain these? How do we understand these? Help me understand. We'll go to the science.
Despite its scientific progress, ethical concerns about embryonic stem cell research have been voiced by doctors, scientists, women's groups, and ethicists.
In embryonic stem cell research, what makes the controversy so intense is that a nascent human being, that is, an embryo at the 1-week stage, is being destroyed for its body parts, if you will, its stem cells. It is to use nascent human life as a corn crop ripe for the harvest.
Well, there are probably as many definitions of human life as there are scientists. But one thing I'm absolutely convinced of is that an embryo in a dish is not a human life, and it's certainly not a person.
Well, I don't think that's a scientific statement. I think it is a human organismal life in the dish. And it's a common tool of rhetoric in political arguments to win by redefining the terms. I don't think either side should do that.
Well, the scientific definition of human life, I think, within the context of what we're talking about, is that human life begins at conception.
It's admittedly very tiny. It's admittedly in its earliest stages of development. And so the question is, does it have the moral worth that we assign to later stages of human development?
Fertility treatments are now so effective that the vast majority of time we have excess embryos. And the question is, what do we do with those embryos? Do we pick them up? Do we just throw them in the trash? Do we discard them? Or do we find something useful to do with them?
The issue isn't about leftover embryos. The issue is whether or not we can use human life instrumentally.
To those individuals who may have moral issues with human embryonic stem cell research, I would say, I would advise, I would plead education.
Notice all the white lab coats? That's like a badge of authority, the white lab coat. So we're talking about frozen embryos. Very interestingly, just this past month, isn't it this month's World Magazine? It had it on its cover.
Yeah, 25-year-old baby.
25-year-old baby. That the 25 years ago, an embryo was frozen. The baby from that embryo was just born recently. And anyway, it's a great article exploring some of these issues. But the scientists are looking at things a certain way, and they're pretty confident that they can pontificate on some of these moral issues. And here's kind of a summary of what they said. Oops. As many definitions of human life as there are scientists. Okay, so nobody really understands what human life is. But the one guy said, I know for sure that an embryo in a dish is not a human life. The next guy said, well, we know scientifically that human life begins at conception. So that was interesting to hear from him. we should do something useful with excess embryos. Now, when you see the word should or ought, often that implies a moral statement. To those who have moral reservations about human embryonic stem cell research, I would plead education. Now, what does he mean by that? There you go. You guys are stupid. Yes. You need to be educated. You need to listen to us more. Okay. So, get a lab coat. Talk about things you don't know about. No. Okay, scientists are smart, they're capable, they have areas of expertise. But we need to make sure that we're listening to proper authorities talk about what they have expertise in. So this is actually called the fallacy of the expert witness. Somebody who's brought forward as an expert, you're just supposed to trust whatever they have to say, but we actually need to be careful. So, advice with any expert. Ask, are they competent in the relevant field? Okay, so these scientists in the lab coats, the one may have been competent in knowing how to freeze an embryo, or how to, do other scientific things with physical stuff. Is he competent to weigh in on the moral or ethical implications of it? Well, not by virtue of his science. Maybe there's some other reason why he could do that, but not because he's a scientist. Because science, as Chris pointed out, only deals with physical stuff. Are they positioned to obtain the facts? Here's the important thing. What are the actual reasons or evidence that they're providing? So anybody who's being an expert, and I'm talking about college professors who are standing up in front of a class, they should be prepared, or as part of what they're saying, they should be offering their reasons for why they are saying what they're doing, not just making pronouncements. So when the history professor says, well, the Bible is just a bunch of myths, and now we'll go on to talk about, Middle Eastern history. Well, it raises the question, well, why do you think so? Give me some reasons why you think the Bible is a bunch of myths. Fair question. Beware of the celebrity pitch. Now, some of you may remember when years ago California was having an election, and there was a proposition that was asking the taxpayers to fork out, what was it, $2 billion with the B dollars? Maybe it was $3 billion. A couple of $1 billion to fund embryonic stem cell research. And a lot of the advertisements for this had to do with celebrities that were saying, oh, please do this because there's a possibility that a breakthrough could help treat the disease that I have, or the disability that I have. Well, it's very, it tugs on your heart. You want to help this guy. Is it a good argument? Is he a good expert witness about the moral implications of that? And identified authorities. 9 out of 10 doctors agree. Well, who are these people? Tell me. So just cautions about expert witnesses, all right? And these are kind of classic cautions to keep in mind.
And do they have a vested interest in their opinion?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, okay, number 6. Do they have a vested interest?